The sun was just beginning to dip behind the hilltops of a quiet, upscale suburban neighborhood. Manicured lawns, pristine driveways, and the occasional hum of a Tesla rolling by painted the usual picture of calm wealth. But something new disrupted the rhythm today. A moving truck, parked in front of the house on Sycamore Lane, the largest lot on the street. A black couple stood on the driveway directing movers. He was tall, mid-30s, wearing slacks and a navy polo, clipboard in hand. She wore a white sundress, her braids tied back, as she carried a small box labeled Fragile toward the front porch. Their names were Andre and Mia Carter. To anyone looking through an unbiased lens, it was a typical, even mundane moment. A young couple moving into their new home. But bias had its watchers. From across the street, curtains rustled. 2 houses down, a Ring camera blinked to life. On the corner, a blonde woman in athletic wear clutched her water bottle a little tighter as she passed, her gaze lingering too long. Inside a nearby home, a phone was lifted from its cradle. Yes, hi. I'd like to report some suspicious activity. There are 2 individuals unloading things into the Thompsons' house. They don't look like the owners. The dispatcher asked a few follow-up questions. No, I haven't seen them before. And yes, they're black. I just think someone should check it out. Within 15 minutes, a police cruiser turned the corner, slow and deliberate. Lights weren't on, but the message was clear. Someone had called. Someone saw Andre and Mia and decided they didn't belong. Andre noticed the car before Mia did. He sighed quietly, placing the clipboard on the hood of his car, already knowing what was coming. Mia frowned. Seriously? Yeah, he murmured. Let's just stay calm. The cruiser pulled into the driveway without warning. 2 officers stepped out, one placing a hand casually on his hip. Not aggressive, but not exactly neighborly either. Good evening, one said. We got a call about some unusual activity. Mind telling us what you're doing here? Andre looked at Mia, then back at the officers. We're moving in, he said simply. The officer raised an eyebrow. Do you have any proof of that? And just like that, the moment turned. Not dangerous, not loud, but unmistakably insulting. The kind of moment that demanded dignity in the face of disbelief. Andre reached calmly into his back pocket and pulled out a folder. Inside, property deed, bank transfer receipt, and a welcome letter from the Homeowners Association. He handed it over wordlessly. The officers glanced at the documents, then at each other. The truth was written in ink, but regret? That was still being written. The officer holding the folder cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable now. His partner leaned over to glance at the documents, their expressions shifting from suspicion to embarrassment. Everything was in order. The deed, the signature, the date. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a mistake. Mia folded her arms, not saying a word. She didn't need to. The silence hanging between them said enough. So, you just moved in today? The first officer asked, suddenly polite, his tone noticeably different. Andre nodded, cool and measured. We closed on the house last week. Movers came this morning. We were almost done when you showed up. The officer looked around as if searching for a way to justify their presence. Right. Well, there was a call from someone concerned about activity here, so we had to respond. Mia raised an eyebrow. Concerned that what? We were stealing our own furniture? The second officer avoided her gaze. Andre didn't let the silence stretch long. Do you make it a habit to stop and question people based on neighborly hunches? We're just doing our jobs, the officer muttered, handing back the documents. We'll note everything's in order. No, Andre said, voice sharp but calm. What you're going to note is that someone called the police on 2 homeowners because we didn't fit the picture they expected. You're going to write that in your report. For a brief moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the officer nodded. Yes, sir. The cruiser pulled away moments later, leaving Andre and Mia standing in their driveway, framed by cardboard boxes and uneaten takeout on the porch. Across the street, a curtain dropped quickly. Whoever had been watching wasn't interested in being seen anymore. Mia turned to Andre. You think it was the woman with the dog? Maybe, he said. Could have been any of them, or all of them. She let out a breath that sounded like surrender, but wasn't. Well, now they know. We're not going anywhere. He smiled faintly. Not a damn inch. And as the porch light clicked on behind them, something settled in the air. Not anger, not fear. Resolve. The next morning brought sunshine, birdsong, and a thick layer of awkward tension that settled like dew over Sycamore Lane. Mia stood at the kitchen window, sipping coffee from a mug that read, Homeowner Vibes, watching the same blonde woman from the day before walk her dog. Only this time, she didn't slow down. No lingering glances, no polite wave, just a quick flick of the eyes before she moved along like nothing had happened. Andre entered the room, buttoning his shirt. Well, either we're invisible again, or they've officially started the ignore and forget phase. Mia smirked. Would be nice if they skipped to the apologize and grow phase. They spent the day finishing up the move, hanging artwork, arranging books, unboxing memories from a different zip code, one where they'd never had to explain why they belonged. But here, in this cul-de-sac of quiet judgments, every gesture felt like a statement. Later that afternoon, Mia decided to walk to the community mailbox. She wore her brightest smile, her calmest stride, not forced, just intentional. She passed two neighbors on the way, a retired couple tending to their flower beds. The woman looked up, gave a small nod. The man didn't look at all. At the mailbox, she met someone new. A tall man in a golf cap was already there, shuffling through his mail. He looked up and offered a rehearsed smile. Afternoon, he said, cautious. Hey there, Mia replied. You're the new owners of the Thompsons' place, right? That's us, she said. Moved in yesterday. He nodded, hesitated, then said, Heard there was some confusion with the police? Mia tilted her head. Is that what they're calling it? He cleared his throat. I'm sure it wasn't personal. Of course not, she said coolly. They just saw two black people with moving boxes and thought, can't be homeowners. Totally understandable. The man looked down at his shoes, visibly uncomfortable. Mia took her mail, gave him a polite nod, and added, Have a great day. On the walk back, she didn't feel bitter. She felt clear. People didn't want to confront their own prejudice, but they were being forced to now. Her and Andre's presence was peeling back layers of comfortable ignorance, and the street was suddenly, unavoidably, awake. That evening, Andre hosted a quiet dinner in their new backyard, just the two of them, a couple of string lights, and a bottle of wine that had traveled with them from their last place. But even as jazz hummed from the Bluetooth speaker and grilled vegetables sizzled on the plate, the air still felt heavy. I thought moving here would mean peace, Mia said, her voice low, almost getting lost in the breeze. Andre took a sip of his wine, nodding slowly. We didn't move here for peace. We moved here because we earned it. There's a difference. She looked at him, thoughtful. This house, he continued, every inch of it came from hard work, long hours, and sacrifice. We shouldn't have to shrink ourselves to make anyone else feel comfortable with that. Mia leaned back in her chair, watching the stars emerge through a thin haze above the treetops. It's not just about us anymore. You're right, Andre said, which is exactly why we're staying. Not just to live here, but to exist here, fully. Loudly. Just then a rustle came from beyond the fence. Footsteps on gravel. Then a familiar voice. Hey. Hope I'm not intruding. They both turned. It was the woman from the flower bed, the one who hadn't made eye contact earlier. She stood awkwardly by the gate, holding a small bundt cake wrapped in foil. I wanted to stop by yesterday, but, well, things got weird, she chuckled nervously. Andre stood up and opened the gate. Evening, he said evenly. I just wanted to say welcome, she offered, stepping forward. And also, I'm really sorry. I think it was my husband who called. He's not a bad man, just, you know. Conditioned Mia raised an eyebrow. Conditioned to be afraid of black homeowners? The woman blushed. Yeah, I suppose that's exactly it. No excuse, really. Andre didn't smile, but he took the cake gently. Thank you. She lingered for a second longer, then gave a slight nod. I hope we can start over. As she walked away, Mia looked at the cake, then at her husband. We just integrated the block with a bundt, Andre laughed. One small slice for man. They sat back down, sharing a quiet clink of glasses. Not everything was fixed, not everyone was redeemed, but the cracks were showing in the polished mask of the neighborhood. And sometimes change starts with discomfort and a bunt cake. By the next morning, word had spread. Not just about the bunt cake, but about what had happened. The police call, the papers Andre had calmly presented, the fact that the new couple weren't just visiting or the new help, but the actual owners of the biggest property on Sycamore Lane. The neighborhood WhatsApp group thread lit up, coded phrases like misunderstanding, overreaction, and cultural differences being tossed around like soft cushions, trying to muffle the weight of what had happened. One message read, "We should be more welcoming next time. They seem very professional." Another chimed in, "Did anyone ever verify where they work?" Mia saw the screenshots. A younger neighbor, Nina, biracial, quiet, worked remotely in tech, had forwarded them to her with a note. "Just so you're aware. It's subtle, but it's still poison." Mia showed the messages to Andre over breakfast. He read them, then folded the phone shut. "So they're uncomfortable because we didn't come with permission slips," he said. "They're uncomfortable," Mia replied, "because they thought this neighborhood was theirs alone." But that night, the discomfort shifted. Andre had been invited, reluctantly at first, then formally, to a community association meeting. He accepted, not because he wanted to win anyone over, but because he knew how things worked in places like this. If you weren't in the room, they decided who you were without you. So he went. He walked in wearing a tailored suit, calm and confident. A few turned to greet him. Others avoided eye contact. He introduced himself not as the new guy, but as a business owner, a former Marine officer, and now a proud resident. The room went still. And then he said, "I know what happened wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a reflection. And if this neighborhood wants to be as inclusive as it claims, then some of you need to start asking better questions. Not just about me, but about yourselves." It wasn't a speech. It was a mirror. And some people, for the first time, actually looked. The days that followed were quieter, but not silent. There was a new kind of energy on Sycamore Lane now, an undercurrent of watchfulness. Some neighbors began offering awkward waves from afar, as if trying to patch a leak with a smile. Others still avoided eye contact entirely. But one morning, a sleek black SUV pulled into the Carter's driveway. Out stepped a well-dressed black woman with confidence in her stride and a leather briefcase in hand. She hugged Mia at the door and exchanged a firm handshake with Andre. Her name was Danielle Brooks, a journalist and senior editor for a major digital magazine. She had reached out after hearing about the police incident, not because it had gone viral, but because she wanted to talk about the pattern behind it, the invisible thread that wove through neighborhoods just like this one. Inside, she clicked on a recorder and asked, "Do you mind walking me through what happened? Not just the call, the feeling of it." Andre spoke plainly. Mia added her moments, the mailbox tension, the tone shift with police, the online group thread that danced around the real issue. Danielle nodded, scribbled notes, and finally asked, "Why stay? Why not move somewhere else?" Andre looked at Mia. "Because we don't owe anyone an exit." Mia added, "And we're tired of pretending that their comfort should always come before our existence." Danielle's eyes sharpened. That's the quote. The article came out 3 days later, titled "Permission to Belong, The Reality of Black Homeownership in White Suburbia." It struck a nerve. Emails flooded in. Black families across the country shared similar stories. Some had moved, some stayed and fought. Others were still in the daily struggle of just being seen beyond assumption. What no one on Sycamore Lane expected, not even Andre, was that the piece would go national. By the weekend, news vans showed up. Quietly at first, then not so quietly. Local reporters asked questions the neighborhood didn't want to answer. But the Carters? They answered everyone, calmly, proudly, truthfully. They weren't just neighbors anymore. They were now the reason this neighborhood would never pretend again that it didn't know better. A month later, the neighborhood looked the same on the surface. Neatly trimmed lawns, Range Rovers in driveways, golden retrievers on morning walks. But beneath the polished facade, something fundamental had changed. The HOA, under pressure from both media attention and internal reckoning, held a special town hall. This time, not in someone's oversized living room with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, but in the local community center, open to the public. Andre was invited, not just to attend, but to speak. He didn't arrive as the black man who got the cops called on him. He arrived as a respected homeowner, entrepreneur, and advocate for equity, a man who had turned quiet humiliation into undeniable leadership. He stood at the podium in front of dozens of residents, some uneasy, some supportive, some simply curious, and he spoke not with bitterness, but with clarity. "We didn't move here to make anyone feel uncomfortable," he began, "but we also didn't move here to shrink ourselves to fit into a version of suburbia that only exists for some." He paused. The room was silent. "We live here now. We own our space, not just our house, but our right to exist without suspicion, without surveillance, without assumptions." Mia sat in the front row, proud and steady. A few minutes later, the applause came, hesitant at first, then louder. The kind of applause that didn't just mean agreement. It meant surrender. It meant acknowledgement. In the weeks that followed, things began to shift in real, tangible ways. The HOA reviewed its complaint protocols. New neighbors started introducing themselves instead of watching from behind blinds. A local high school invited Andre to speak about race and ownership, and the article Danielle wrote became part of a university curriculum on systemic bias. But for the Carters, the most meaningful change came in small, unremarkable moments. A wave from the mail carrier, a casual good morning from the dog-walking neighbor, children playing near their front yard without their parents pulling them away. Normalcy, but on their terms. Andre and Mia sat on their porch one evening, wine glasses in hand, watching the street grow quiet under a pink sky. No flashing lights, no suspicion. No apologies needed. Just a home. And the peace that comes not from being tolerated, but from being finally and fully seen.